Right now, as you're watching this video, you're probably alone in your room, or maybe you've put on your headphones and built an invisible wall between yourself and the people around you. Closing the door, drawing the curtains, hiding your phone screen from others. These things are as natural to you as drinking water, aren't they? You're right. The first rule of survival in the modern world is to create a private space of our own. Now, I want you to tear down those walls completely. Seriously, wipe them all away. No walls, no doors, no curtains. Forget even the idea of having a room of your own. We're going back 150,000 years, right into the heart of the wild. You're a member of a small tribe. There are 30 or 40 people around you. And do you know what the strange part is? Throughout your entire life, from the moment you're born until the moment you die, you won't be alone for even a single second. Literally, not even a single second. That sacred concept we call privacy today hadn't even been invented in the ancient world. What sounds like a nightmare to us was just an ordinary Tuesday for our ancestors. But have you ever wondered, how did the desire to hide, one of humanity's most basic instincts, take shape in an era where everything happened in plain sight? 150,000 years ago, let's meet our ancient friend, Grug. Grug is currently sitting by the evening fire. He's feeling a bit down. Perhaps he had a minor argument with other members of the tribe and wants to be alone for a while. What can he do? He can't retreat to his tent and lock the door because he shares it with 5 other people. He can't turn around and walk into the forest because predators are waiting for him in the dark. Grug's only option is to stay right there, in plain sight with everyone else. This is exactly where that big question mark, one our modern brains struggle to grasp, comes into play. How do you experience love in a world without privacy? How do you gossip? And most importantly, how do you avoid going mad and killing each other when the rest of the tribe is watching your every move? The answer is far more surprising than you might think, because our ancestors solved the problem of privacy not with physical walls, but with something much more powerful: psychological walls. Imagine for a moment looking around through Grug's eyes. Everyone knows what everyone else eats, when they sleep, and even how often they scratch themselves. Whatever we today would say, "Let's keep this private," was back then like the tribe's live broadcast. So how did people not go crazy while living in such close quarters? The answer anthropologists found is quite fascinating. Our ancestors compensated for the lack of physical walls with social courtesy and unspoken rules. In other words, they had developed a sort of art of turning a blind eye. For example, when Grug was feeling down and turned his back to sit facing the wall, or rather the cave's rock face, the other members of the tribe assumed he wasn't there. This was that era's "please do not disturb" sign. No one went over to tap Grug on the shoulder. They left him alone with his thoughts, even though physically they were only 30 centimeters away. But when more basic human needs came into play, things got much stranger. The need to use the restroom, for instance. They were no small rooms like the ones we lock ourselves in today. How did our ancestors handle this? Of course, they'd go behind the bushes, but everyone knew exactly why everyone else was there. The strange thing is, nobody cared. Bodily functions weren't as shameful secrets. They were simply biological routines necessitated by survival. Of course, the real danger was a leopard watching you from the bushes behind you, not what your tribe thought.
This is exactly where a bigger question mark arises. If everything was so out in the open, how did people keep their secrets and plans to themselves? How could you tell someone else that you liked a certain person or that you thought the tribal leader was being annoying? Because the ears around you were always listening. And in the ancient world, a small secret whispered from ear to ear could throw the entire tribe's balance into disarray. Our ancestors had found a much more dangerous and clever way to communicate without words, to hide within everyone. Now let's make things a little more personal. Let's say you had a crush on someone in the tribe. In the modern world, this is easy. You send a message, go for coffee alone, or meet somewhere private. But what about in that era, when there were no walls? What did Grug do when he fell in love with another group? He had to live out his romance right in front of the entire tribe, holding hands or flirting with someone while everyone lay side by side around the evening fire. It sounds incredibly strange, doesn't it? But for ancient people, this was the normal course of life. The truth is, anthropological research reveals a very interesting fact. In ancient times, the concept of romantic privacy was completely different from what it is today. Today, we view reproduction and intimacy as actions that are entirely confined within four walls, something secret and hidden. But that wasn't the case back then. For people in ancient times, reproduction was as natural, vital, and biological a routine as eating or sleeping. Of course, this didn't mean they behaved recklessly in front of everyone. People usually chose the cover of night, the moments when the fire was dying down, or secluded corners of the nearby forest. But the real difference here was this: they didn't care one bit about what the tribe they left behind thought, because concepts like shame, sin, or moral guilt had not yet descended upon societies like a nightmare. In fact, anthropology tells us something even more surprising. In many hunter-gatherer communities, reproduction was almost a collective joy and a matter of survival, since it meant the future of the tribe, that is, the birth of new hunters and gatherers. No one was spying on anyone else, but no one went to great lengths to hide what was happening either. Everyone was fully aware of everything, and this transparency, unlike for modern people today, did not evoke even the slightest sense of shame in them. What was truly strange was how this situation shaped relationships. Without privacy, your chances of cheating or engaging in underhanded dealings were virtually zero. Everything was so transparent that relationships within the tribe were built entirely on trust and social approval. If you were with someone, everyone had to know about it anyway, because the tribe's future depended on the children yet to be born. But this situation brought another problem with it. If everyone could see every moment of everyone else's life, wouldn't there be constant fighting within the tribe? Wouldn't 30 or 40 people living in such close quarters strangle each other at the slightest spark?
It was precisely at this point that the most powerful weapon developed by our ancestors came into play: gossip. But not in the sense we know it today. It was a method of communication, carried out in full view of everyone, that was the most critical part of survival. In the modern world, gossip takes place behind closed doors, in hushed tones. Talking behind someone's back is frowned upon. But in the ancient world, in that cave where everyone could see everything at all times, keeping gossip secret was nearly impossible. So how did our ancestors maintain their social bonds? This is where eye contact and body language came into play. When Grug and his friend were unhappy with the tribal leader's unfair distribution of the hunt's spoils, they couldn't say so out loud. But a single meaningful glance across the cave, a slight curl of the lip or a shrug of the shoulders could convey as much as pages of complaints. Our ancestors had become absolute experts in micro-expressions and silent signals. They could understand one another without anyone else noticing. Moreover, anthropology tells us that one of the biggest factors in the evolution of language was actually this open-field gossip. People constantly monitored each other's trustworthiness, who was slacking off, who was watching each other's backs on the hunt, and discussed it openly around the campfire. There was no privacy, because transparency was the tribe's safety net. If you acted selfishly, everyone would see it, and your share of the hunted meat would shrink the next day. Still, this situation left a deep imprint on human psychology. The feeling of being watched at all times was so deeply ingrained in the recesses of our brains that even today, the sudden sense of peace we feel when we're alone or the intense stress we experience when speaking in front of a group are legacies from those days. So what ultimately became of a life lived with such transparency, so close-knit? When did humanity say, enough is enough, give me some space of my own, and invent doors? And most importantly, were we truly happier once we found privacy, or did we lose something forever? Everything changed when we transitioned to a settled life with the advent of agriculture and began building our first homes out of mud brick and stone. For the first time in human history, Grug and his descendants erected thick, solid barriers between themselves and the outside world. They closed the door. Only they knew what lay inside. At first, this must have seemed like an incredible luxury. Finally, you could sleep, eat, and think without anyone watching you. Humanity had discovered privacy and seclusion, but this new discovery came with a heavy, invisible price. The walls didn't just protect us from outside eyes, they also separated us from our tribe. For a species that had spent thousands of years sharing every moment with a community and had scarcely ever experienced loneliness, this was an entirely new situation: loneliness. Today, in the modern world, in the vast metropolises where millions of people live, the origin of that strange emptiness we feel when we retreat into our own safe rooms lies precisely here. Our ancestors lived with zero privacy, but also zero loneliness. We, on the other hand, have achieved absolute privacy, but we're paying the price with profound loneliness. Now, when you turn off your phone's screen and immerse yourself in the silence of the room, think about this. You're safe behind your walls. No one is watching you. It's a wonderful feeling, but deep within your brain there remains an ancient part that still seeks the warmth of that old cave fire and that strange, complex sense of security created by the 30 people breathing around you.
Because even though we've invented doors and locks, the spirit hiding behind those walls is still none other than that ancient human struggling to survive in plain sight. There may be thousands of years and thick walls between us and our ancestors, but in reality, we're not as different as we think. If, in the room where you're sitting right now, you felt even a hint of that bustling cave fire from thousands of years ago, you can join our tribe by liking the video. Which do you think is better, absolute privacy or never being alone? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, as if carving them into the wall. Until our next story, when we'll explore a new mystery behind the cave wall.